Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. It's a hump day edition, a Wednesday episode here. Hump day, as the Geico commercial goes. And we are talking about a little bit more of a specific topic today. We just had OTAs yesterday, and we mostly talked about that on yesterday's podcast. We could touch upon it today as well, too. But for Wednesday's episode, we're going to be talking about which Tampa Bay Buccaneers currently on the roster need to have a great training camp coming up. Who needs it the most? So we'll get into a lot of that today. I'm your host, Matt Matera, and joined with me is JC Allen, also of PewterReport.com. JC, great to have you on the show today. So pumped that you could join me as we discuss this very fun topic today. Don't want to get Bucs fans too concerned because there's a long way to go, but there's a couple players that we do have our eyes on. But JC, how are you doing today?
Doing great, just living the dream out here in beautiful sunny Florida. I'm excited to get into this because there's a lot of players. I know OTAs just started, but there's a lot of players who really need to take these OTAs, build on them, and then bring that into training camp and build upon it further, especially a couple of guys, vying for starting spots and starting roles on this team.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's really an important part that we have to harp on is some of these guys, if they were in different situations on another team where maybe the depth wasn't so great, then they can kind of, I don't want to say mosey because everyone's obviously here in the NFL and giving it their all, but they could get away with having a less than stellar type of OTAs and training camp. And as we talk right now, the Bucs finished up day 2 of their OTAs. We will be back at the facility next Wednesday. That's the next one that is open to the media. But because of the depth at some of the positions, especially wide receiver, there's a couple wide receivers that we're going to be talking about on today's show that really have to pick it up because it's going to be a survival of the fittest out there. One of those, of course, is Jalen Darden, who did have a nice day yesterday. We talked about it a little bit on the podcast where Jalen Darden had a deep ball all the way down the field. He beat D. Delaney, who was the best corner of the day. Like, it was all D. Delaney highlights. He broke up a pass that led to an interception. He had his own interception later, picking off Blaine Gabbert as he was covering tight end Cody McElroy on the play. So for Darden to get the better of D. Delaney on that play, it was a very promising sign towards the end of practice. But Jalen Darden, it's no secret that to everyone watching this that he's on this list because he was the head logo of the production today. But JC, just tell me your thoughts heading into this season about Jalen Darden. There's been a lot of discussion on him. Scott and I spoke about him yesterday about how we think the Bucs shouldn't pull the plug on him yet because he's only a second-year player. But what are your thoughts about Jalen Darden?
Yeah, Darden's definitely, there's room for improvement for sure in both aspects of what they really brought him in for. And that was as a return specialist and as a receiver. If you look at what he did in college, his final year, he had the third most yards after catch in the country behind Devonta Smith and another player. I can't remember his name. Devonta Smith stands out. But, this guy, he was very productive, very good. And I heard you guys talking about it yesterday. Early in camp, like, he was tearing it up. Like, he looked really good in training camp to the point where they had to take him off the second team unit and put him with the first team unit with Brady and Gabbert because he was just torching the second team cornerbacks. He was going, not even midway through camp, he was going up against Carlton Davis and SMB and Jamel Dean because the competition that was just too less for him. And then obviously it didn't translate into the game and the return ability didn't translate. Slip and slide, I know, is a big thing people like to joke on him for, but I think there's still something there. I agree with you guys. I don't want to say he's not on the bubble, but I also don't think that he's the first name on that bubble either. He definitely needs to come in and prove and show that he's got a better understanding of the offense, better understanding of how to get open against NFL level cornerbacks, and also show consistent hands, right, in the receiving game. And as for a return game, you just got to go out there and you got to take control of that role.
Own it
and show that I can do this. I'm not going to dance around when I get the ball looking for holes. I'm going to get the ball. I'm going to boom, I'm taking off. I'm looking for that hole and show that good vision to be able to return it for more than 6-7 yards a carry. So I see a path where he can definitely be a solid contributor on this team going forward. He's definitely got some of the shiftiness, some of the elusiveness as a receiver with the ball as a ball carrier after he makes a catch. It's just being more consistent in all levels, and that's why he's on the graphic today. That's why he's the first guy we're talking about, is because there's talent there. He just needs to be honed. And plus he came from a smaller school as well too. So
yeah,
we knew that level of competition jump was going to be something that would probably, keep him from making that immediate jump as a contributor. But there's no excuses now. You're in year 2.
JC, just to clarify, when you said he's not the first one on the bubble, are you talking in terms of the whole roster or in terms of the wide receiver position?
Well, I mean, the whole roster, there's a lot of guys on the bubble.
Yeah.
Really, work to save their jobs from younger players or up and coming players, or even veterans or free agents that were brought in. But on the wide receiver bubble, yeah, for sure. I mean, you're looking at, I think all those guys after Gage, it's a fight. It's a battle royale.
And 100% agreed. I don't want you to name any names yet because we have a couple other wide receivers on this list that we'll get to. And just so everyone's aware, we're going to start with the offense because we have a couple more names on the offensive side of the ball that we feel really need to have a great OTA and training camp. Not as many players on the defense, but we'll get to both sides of the ball for sure. Shout out to Mark Fisher with this comment. I think it's a great point that he makes. And JC, you actually just spoke about it too before he even got a chance to put it up on the screen there. But he says Darden wowed at training camp last year. Do it with the pads. And I agree. And JC, you just said it about that he was playing so well that they moved him up to work with the starters or the key guys that were there at the time, like Blaine Gabbert. And we were all so impressed with that speed and with the way that he was able to move. But you remember, too, that Bruce Arians got mad at him because he couldn't hold on to the ball. Not mad, but like a BA type of mad. And you look at it like his stat line last year as well, it was all just the return game. I mean, he played in 9 games. He had 6 catches for 43 yards, and a majority of that was in mop-up duty late in the game when it was already decided. He had 19 punt returns for 147 yards. It averaged to 7.5 yards per return, and that even seems like it was too much. He did have one that went for 43 yards, and that kind of skewed the numbers in his favor a little bit. And then as a kick return, he had 18 returns and averaged even, I believe, not the best type of kick return average too. So for Darden, I just think with the potential, and I get all the points that everyone makes and that you talked about too, JC, where he comes from a small school, but he had a nose for the end zone. No one scored more than he did, or he was up there at the top. No one made plays like he did. I really think with the current iteration of the roster, and it's Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, as you said, battle royale, open competition after that. With the skill set and the speed that Jalen Darden has, there's no reason why he can't win the 4th wide receiver this year. Just because based on the talent, I just think that he really needs to improve. Like, he has to get better at that route running. He has to catch the ball. He has to prove that he can win one-on-one battles. His size worries me a little bit because he's on the smaller side, and hopefully he's putting on muscle, in the offseason, or he has. I didn't see too much of a difference when I saw him at OTAs, but he's going to have to win those one-on-one battles because it's the only way that he's going to see the field this year.
Yeah, and the thing about too is like the Bucs really put an onus on saying, and we've talked about this, and John did a whole wonderful article about this 2 years ago about what the Bucs look for their starting wide receivers, right? The size, the measurables, the 3-cone time. When they're drafting a wide receiver high or looking at a wide receiver high, they put a lot of onus into that. When they're looking for a later round, 4th round, and later, and undrafted free agency, they don't care about as much as the measurables that they tend to look for. And we saw that with undrafted free agency. He's not going up against one guy who's around the same height as he's going up against 3 guys right now that are all the same amount of height. And 2 of them had tremendous production, and Jarrett Stearns and Caitlin Geiger and
Devin Tompkins played well too
as well. I mean, all these guys are 5'9" or under. I mean, Stearns is only 5'7". But Stearns had the most production out of all of them, 150 receptions, 17 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's got some real competition from these guys, and they're going to give him everything they can. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, because I think you've got your one group of wide receivers and I won't mention their name. They're a little bit bigger or whatever. And then you've got this other group of wide receivers that are on the smaller side. And those guys, I feel like, are really competing against each other for one of these last spots. Whether the Bucs keep 5 or 6, is going to be an interesting storyline because, again, whether they keep 5 running backs or they keep 4 tight ends with Keith and everything, like what are they going to, if Gronk comes back, when Gronk comes back, what are they going to do? How are they going to split the roster around? And not much is going to change, but we still saw this offense run out of 12 personnel a lot last year too. Mm-hmm. So what do they do? How many do they keep? We know that this is going to be an extreme battle with Darden and these younger guys, and also against
right. And that's the thing is Darden's not just competing against the veteran players and the receivers that have been on here for the roster. As you just made your point, Stearns is probably one of my favorite receivers that I've watched over the rookie minicamp and the OTAs too. So there's a chance. And again, he's not the size the Bucs typically look for, but if you can ball, you can ball. And that punt return opportunity, that position, that role on this team, again, is a wide open battle royale because we saw it yesterday where you had Scotty Miller, you had SMB, you had Stearns back there. So there's a number of different guys, and that was Darden's role last year, but that's not to say that he's going to have it this season by any means. We got a super chat here from William Butler. Thank you so much, William. Stays on the topic of wide receiver, but a different wide receiver, of course. Thank you, William, for the $4.99 super chat. He says, fellas, when should we expect Chris Godwin back, in your opinion? Worst case and best case. So we actually asked, or I should say it was asked to Todd Bowles yesterday about when Chris Godwin could be back, because he was at the facility, but he was not practicing during OTAs. There's actually a picture of him. We posted it on Pewter Report's Twitter, so you can check it out there.
A cookie with the most magical face. Like, I want one of those cookies. I don't know.
Wait, what?
But there's a guy in the picture.
Yeah.
And he just has his most euphoric expression on his face. Like, this is the best cookie in my life. I was like, they don't give us cookies at $1. I want a cookie, but sorry, go ahead. I got sidetracked.
Yeah, no, you're good. I mean, I have a sweet tooth, so anytime I see something good dessert related or cookie related, I'm definitely down with that. But Bowles was asked about that, and pretty much the point he said is that he's not setting a timetable. Chris Godwin is not going to be back yet. He'll be ready when he's going to be ready. When he gets to practice, he'll be at practice. So not really too much of an update there. The last we spoke to Chris Godwin, he said that rehab was going well, but he said the same thing about he doesn't want to put a timetable on it because once you start doing that, if you don't reach that date, then it feels like a failure, or, you just have that mindset set up where you're only going to that date, whether it be, August 15th, August 27th, whatever it might be. So in my estimation, and I'm not a doctor, and after speaking to Godwin and speaking to Bowles, I get the sense that Godwin will make an appearance at some point during training camp. It's tough to say. I don't want to put a date on it either. I don't know if it's going to be after the first preseason game and he comes back, but I don't think it'll be September and Godwin hasn't at least had a practice yet with the Bucs.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. And for me, the biggest, the most telling part of that press conference with Bowles yesterday was he said he's better than where he was, but he's not where he needs to be. And that kind of made me think, and I've been kind of pondering on that since he said it last yesterday. What does that mean when he's not where he needs to be? Is he just general coach? Well, he's not where he needs to be, or is he not where he should have been? Is there a delay? Is he a little bit behind? Is he not where they expected him to be right now? But then he followed up with he works hard too. So this is one of those biggest things, the most trickiest things, because it's an ACL tear. And as Scott eloquently puts it, players usually aren't the same right away after an ACL tear. It usually takes them a little while. So do you want to throw him out in the fire? Do you if he's ready to go, right? Start him week 1 against Dallas. But if he's not if he's not Chris Godwin and there's any chance, I don't want to rush him is what I'm trying to say. I don't want to rush him. I would much rather see him week 5 against, I think it's the Atlanta Falcons at home. And I think that for me is the worst case scenario, week 5. Best case scenario is what you said. He's ready for training camp, ready to roll. I just don't see that happening. But I think if you start the season keep him out until week 5. Let him go against the Falcons. Let's get past Green Bay and Kansas City. It's going to be a tougher challenge without him there. But at the same time, you're going to get your best from those two teams. Definitely keep him out for the Saints because they'll try to injure him again. Just kidding.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know. It's definitely interesting to see what the comments have been, where he says he's been, and trying to put all that together in a puzzle piece. I mean, we're in May, but training camp starts July 25th, reportedly. That's right around the corner. I mean, that's a month. That's a month, 2 months away. So can he make the progress in 2 months to start training camp, or is it more he starts August 25th towards the end of it? I don't know.
And listen, we need to understand too, and Bucs fans need to understand, we all want Chris Godwin back ASAP.
Yes.
As quickly as possible. But we also have to understand the long-term game. All right. They signed Godwin to a long-term extension. And everyone was thrilled about that. But would you rather have Chris Godwin in September and things don't go right? He came back too early and there's more issues with that knee. Or would you make sure and know that you're going to have Chris Godwin in December when you're on the playoff run, getting ready for the postseason? Every single Bucs fan would sign up to guarantee that Godwin's going to be at full health, at full strength in December. And whether Godwin comes back in May, July, August, October, November, December, everyone's going to be so pumped up, so excited, so energized to see Chris Godwin back, much like when you get energized by drinking Celsius energy drinks. JC is rocking. What are you rocking there, JC?
This is the jackfruit.
Awesome. Oh, yeah, I've had the jackfruit before. The tall boys, right?
The 300 milligrams.
Yeah, awesome. I got the sparkling. Yeah, I got the sparkling orange pomegranate there. But as you see on the screen now, there are so many different flavors of Celsius energy drinks. You got your tropical vibe. You got your sparkling kiwi guava, the strawberry, the orange, the wild berry. There are so many different flavors, and they are all fantastic. There is no other energy drink company that takes all of these flavors and are able to get the exact same taste in a can. So it's the variety and the taste of it that is amazing, as you'll see here as well, too. They got new ones, the Arctic vibe, the tropical vibe, and the peach vibe. Shout out to our guy, Leighton Carter, who's been a huge fan of Pewter Report for a very long time. He tweeted at us showing the Arctic vibe recently, and he was enjoying that. But you have so many different options, and you drink it because you get that energy that you need, whether you're going through a work day, you have a long drive, maybe you got a game coming up and you want to be ready for it. So you get all the energy and the flavor and the taste that you enjoy, but none of the downside. There's none of those, the post-crash jitters that you get, maybe feeling sluggish after you're coming down from from a Celsius energy drink. That just doesn't happen when you drink Celsius energy. And make sure, everyone, you can go to Amazon, use the promo code Pewter, order some Celsius. They'll send it right to your door. You could set up the times of the packages too, whether they come in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. You can get it on Amazon. You can go to your local bodega close to you. They have it everywhere. And also make sure too that you check out the Celsius Fast Brands energy bars. I mean, they are as good as the drinks are. The bars are just as good. Keep packing that same flavor, and it doesn't break and crumble in your hand like other bars. So make sure you go to Celsius.com for more information. See the store locator, see if there's one near you, or order it on Amazon, like I said. So that's Celsius energy drinks and Celsius Fast Brands. You can't go wrong either way, JC, because Celsius is changing the world, some would say.
It's definitely, it's a game changer for sure. I mean, and then also the best thing too is it helps burn body fat too. So like if you do work out or whatever, you can drink it before your workout and it will actually boost your metabolism while also helping you burn body fat too. So I mean, I actually have a empty Arctic vibe over here that I need to clean out the studio. But yeah, I mean they're my strawberry lemonade, as Nate said too. That's my favorite flavor. I don't know if you found it yet, but it's easily the top flavor, I think.
Yeah, Scott was drinking cola the other day too. So yeah, I mean, like there's so many different flavors. It's unbelievable. And speaking of Celsius, another player on the Bucs, and we're sticking with the wide receiver theme, who has been on the Pewter Report podcast before and has been sponsored by Celsius, is Scotty Miller. And we're talking about Scotty Miller because he's another player that, in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinions, needs to have a good training camp coming up. Now, Scotty, the situation is very different. Shout out to Nate here. He says strawberry lemonade is awesome. Growing on me quickly, JC. So again, all types of different flavors. So Scotty, and you heard a lot of the coaches talk about it. Kevin Garver mentioned it, especially Byron Leftwich mentioned it, where the injuries hurt in general, but the injuries really hurt Scotty Miller because it really hampered what he was able to do. He didn't get to play in a full season. He played in 9 games again, had 5 receptions for 38 yards, 30 plus yards. So really wasn't a factor at all on offense. Had some rushing plays at the end of the season. He had 2 rushes for 43 yards and a touchdown, and he scored a touchdown. I believe that was the Carolina game.
I think so, yeah. It was
but Scotty did make an impact as a gunner on the punt team. So he had 1 fumble recovery, and he had another play where it was pretty much a forced fumble. Yeah. They called it like a muffed punt, but the returner like bobbled it, and then Scotty hit it, got down there so fast because he's one of the fastest guys on the team. Got down there so quickly, pummeled the returner. The ball was loose, and the Bucs ended up recovering it. So Scotty, I think, still has an opportunity to make it as a receiver, but I wouldn't be shocked if Scotty makes it as like the 5th or 6th receiver, but has a main steady role as a gunner on this team.
Yeah, and the thing about Scotty too is, I've said it. I've said he's a one-trick pony. You can only do one thing. The biggest thing for Scotty was show that that's not true, that he can do multiple things. And you mentioned it too. Last year, he wasn't involved as much. Did have a big game. What was it? Week 2 against the Rams. Before he got injured, he was starting to show up a little bit, or week 3 rather. And then obviously the turf toe set in. And at that point, once he came back, Cyril Grayson blew up. They brought in Rashad Perryman, and these other guys started elevating their game. So it's tough for Scotty to work his way back in there coming off injury. So he's going to have a good camp, without a doubt. And he's going to have to show up on special teams as a gunner. He's going to have to show up as a wide receiver, showing that he can do more than just run straight down the field and become a better blocker, which is the biggest thing. Because I think that's one of the biggest things that will carry over from Byron to Bruce is the blocking, especially in this offense. So Rashad Perriman has similar speed and can also, as a bigger body, can play a little bit on the outside as well as a slot, and is a much better blocker. So if Scotty wants to beat Rashad out, if he wants to earn that spot, it's not just going to be on special teams. It's going to have to be and everywhere else. It's going to have to be the grimy catches. It's going to be the dirty work putting his nose into the blocking game. It's going to have to be all those different areas. And I think he's got the ability to do it, but it's going to take, like I said, it's going to take a great camp, and he's going to have to really show out. And he's got a lot of competition here now, and not just some of the guys they brought in. They brought in Cam Brown again. They got Vincent Smith, who's looked pretty good, former Jet that you should know about a little bit. And then they also brought in, they still have Travis Johnson from last year as well.
Yeah.
The Bucs praised up and down for his ability on the scout team, former cornerback at Montana. So, I mean, there's competition here all over the place at wide receiver. And I don't think the Bucs have still ruled out bringing another guy in. And I know the hottest name, and everyone wanted Landry, and the hottest name is still Julio Jones, but there's still plenty of other veteran wide receivers. I really like Keelan Cole before he signed with the Raiders, but I don't know. And Todd Bowles said this yesterday. He said, we're fine with where our roster is at, but let me just, so I don't misquote him. We're fine with where our roster is at, but there's some spots we're possibly looking at bringing in. So one of those spots could potentially be wide receiver, because you've got all this talent and all this depth, but really if Godwin is out till week 5, now you're thrusting one of these guys who are in the battle royale, so to speak, into that wide receiver 3 role. And if Gronk doesn't come, let's just say worst case scenario, Godwin misses the first month, Gronk doesn't come back. Now it's like, okay,
now they need another piece. And
now they need another piece. Right.
Last year too, when Godwin got hurt, they were bailed out a little bit because they really just started throwing it in a different position, but they started throwing it to Leonard Fournette more. And like Leonard Fournette really solidified himself as a guy that the Bucs really want for next season and the upcoming seasons, because they signed him to a 3-year deal. But going back to Scotty, and I wouldn't be surprised either if they added in another wide receiver to this team, because and so one of the receivers that I didn't have on this list is Rashad Perriman, because I think with Perriman, the Bucs know what they're going to get in him. He's a veteran guy who still has speed, doesn't have the best hands, but is an efficient route runner that has played in this offense before, and he understands it. Now,
Right.
for Scotty, this is where I think this might be one of the first times that we see a little bit of a difference between Bruce Arians calling the shots and Todd Bowles calling the shots and allocating a lot of. I mean, Byron Leftwich already had a lot of responsibility, but maybe letting Leftwich make a couple of more decisions on the offensive side of the ball that maybe Arians might end up just going with his gut on it. And as you mentioned, Arians really wanted Scotty Miller to go and get the grimy catches and everything you said. Now, when Leftwich spoke a week or two ago, whenever that was, he said for this year what he wants to see Scotty. He just said he just wants to see Scotty be Scotty. Well, we know what that means. That's Scotty going down the field and being a deep threat. Is that the only thing that he can necessarily do? He can catch some balls underneath, but his biggest threat is when he goes down the field. Now, was it just Arians that was unhappy with that's all he can do, and teams know, okay, well, they're going deep on this play because Scotty Miller's here? Or does Leftwich want to implement that more so it can open up some things underneath? And therefore, if you have all these safeties back, then you can go to Chris Godwin if he's healthy underneath. Then you can go to Russell Gage. I think that might be the first situation, and we're not going to find out just from one day of OTAs or the other 2 days of OTAs when we go. That's going to be more of a training camp thing specifically. But I really do think that this could be one of the situations where Leftwich and Bowles as the head coach might have a little bit of a difference of opinion when it comes to Scotty Miller. We had one more wide receiver on this list. I actually added it late. We didn't have it originally, but we must have glossed over it. And it's a guy that was there were some talks about him last year, and then he got thrown into a bigger role this year, but didn't necessarily have the success that you want to see. Johnson. JC, I'll ask you. You can agree or you can disagree. Do you think Tyler Johnson falls into the category of one of these players that really needs to step it up with a better camp this year?
Yeah, and I think part of that is because they did give him such a opportunity to have a bigger role. It started off in camp where he came in out of shape, and that was a big thing. And that kind of trickled into the season. Obviously, when injuries came up, he was able to have more of a role, but he just didn't. He had some costly drops, and I'm looking at PFF right now. It said he only had 3 drops on the season, was targeted 53 times, caught 36 receptions for 360 yards, 0 touchdowns. So, not exactly what you like to see. He had an overall grade of 55.4 for PFF. So, I mean, that's not what you like to see when you're giving a guy an opportunity to have a bigger role in the offense. And, then obviously injuries set in that Rams game. He goes down. So, I don't think, and again, he was only a 5th round pick. So I don't think anything's locked in. I don't think anything is secure for him that he's 100% going to be the guy. They gave him the opportunity. He didn't really show much progression from his rookie season into a sophomore year. And this junior year is going to be a big year for him. This is the year 2, Matt, that we generally talk about wide receivers taking that 3rd year jump, right? So he's going to have to do that. The problem with him is he didn't show good separation ability, and we know kind of speed knocked him down a little bit in the draft. He's going to have to work on that and just become a technician as a route runner. And I don't know what he's put him to work for, because, there's guys who aren't super fast who can just create separation because of their route running ability. I think Jarvis Landry is actually one of them. So he's going to just have to make sure he develops that part of his game. And the hope is that he spent the entire offseason doing that and working. You want to see, I follow a lot of these guys on Instagram and stuff like that. And some guys you can see are working every single day. They're posting videos. Hey, I'm working. And Jalen Darden is one of them. He's working. Jalen Darden has been nonstop working every single day after the season. He's posting a video almost every day. I didn't see so much from Tyler Johnson. And I kind of wonder if he's like, hey, I'll prove it on the field, or I'll, not a look at me guy. But That's what I want to see. I want to see that he worked on it and he's improved on it, and let's go.
Jalen Darden also goes on Instagram Live
All the
all the time. It's unbelievable. And
time.
it's always like for a minute. It's never like a long, it's never
It's just for like a song too. He doesn't answer any questions. He doesn't really talk to anybody. He just sits there and like listen to a song driving or whatnot.
Yeah, he's I guess he's like, all right, this is my jam. I just want everyone else to enjoy it like I am. But going back to Tyler Johnson, it's interesting with him because I felt last year he had a really good training camp. I know Bruce Arians wasn't happy with him first. He wanted him to like lose some weight and get it going. But once he was here and balling out every day, he was up there as one of the top wide receivers in training camp. Now, understandably, we know what we're going to get with Mike Evans and players of that caliber. But Johnson, I thought, was great in training camp. And then for whatever reason, it didn't necessarily translate into the regular season. Now, JC, you mentioned he had 36 catches for 360 yards. He had a couple solid games. Like against the Rams, he had 3 receptions for 63 yards. A couple weeks later, he had 5 receptions for 65 yards. So he's capable. And he had a pretty good game 2 seasons ago against the Bears, the Thursday night debacle.
Yeah.
But he played very well in that game. So everyone remembers it for that. I think Johnson still has the potential, but he hadn't. I just remember too, especially late in the season and towards the playoffs as well too. There was just some times where, sure, it might not have been the best throw, but it was third down. It's just like, come on, man, we really need you to make that catch. So I agree with you with everything that you said in terms of he needs to win those battles. He needs to win those one-on-one routes. That's just a staple of this Buccaneers offense, regardless of who the coach is or who the offensive coordinator is. That's really, that's the MO of the offense. So a lot of these wide receivers that we talked about so far just haven't won those one-on-one battles. And we'll see if the undrafted rookies can do it with Tompkins and Brown and
pass blocking too is another thing that he's going to have to improve. And I mean, PFF has him for 0 pass blocking snaps last season at all. So I mean, if he wants to be a every down contributor like the rest of the guys are, he's going to need to be able to throw his body around and help in the running game, because I think you heard Bull said that's where they're going to look for this year, is to have a little bit more balance, but they're not going to handicap themselves, but they would like more balance in the running game. But if they have to throw 60 times, whatever, if they have to run 60 times, whatever it's going to be to help them win. But the blocking game just doesn't start up front. It also includes the wide receivers as well. And I think for any of these running backs to have a chance, especially one of these guys who is working his way to hopefully have a role in this team, they're going to need help from the guys on the outside as well.
Yeah, agreed. And Common Sensei says here, TJ too slow and started dropping the ball a lot. He had some drop issues. I wouldn't categorize him as, a guy that is always going to worry, that you have to worry about with the drops. I would almost say like you would have to worry about Jalen Darden dropping the ball more than Tyler Johnson. But I agree with your point about blocking too. And blocking, a lot of it is a mindset. And JC, I don't know about you, but my mindset would be a lot better too if I won $10 million like you can here with Best Ball Mania 3 at Underdog Fantasy. And folks, let me tell you, the best place to play fantasy football this summer is Underdog Fantasy. Their Best Ball Mania 3 tournament has $10 million in total prize money. And the best part is you just draft your fantasy football team, and that's it. Last year, they had someone that won $2 million. They drafted their team in June. So the earlier you do it, the better. The best part is, too, you just draft your fantasy football team. That's it. There's no waivers, no trades, no in-season management. You just set it and forget it. You don't have to worry about different bye weeks, injuries, what defense they're playing against. It's all good to go right after you draft your team. Underdog gives you your best score each week of the season, and the highest scores at the end of the year win. The champion of Best Ball Mania last year, like I said, they drafted in June. So there's no time like the present to go to Underdog and take your shot at $1 million draft. Plus, Underdog Fantasy is going to double your first deposit up to $100 when you sign up with the promo code Pewter. That's 4 free entries into Best Ball Mania 3. So what are you waiting for? Head to UnderdogFantasy.com or the app and sign up for Underdog Fantasy with the promo code Pewter and draft your Best Ball Mania 3 team today. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Pewter. And Underdog Fantasy also has a lot of other cool things as the season gets closer too. Pewter Report will have a couple Underdog Fantasy leagues. You have to set it and forget it, as we just talked about with Best Ball Mania 3. They also have a lot of daily and weekly events too. So if there's one particular week you think the Bucs are going to go off and score 55 points and you want to make sure you get, Leonard Fournette and Mike Evans in your lineup, you could do a weekly fantasy where you try to bet those players. If it's Monday Night Football and you're like, I feel good about this game, you can go and just do a Monday Night Football one. So again, go to underdogfantasy.com for more information. And again, use the promo code Pewter. All right. We talked enough about
they got cool prop bets too, and they got some verses as well where they pick players in the same game against each other. So definitely a cool thing. Before we jump into the next position, I just wanted to quickly address this question. Pushimi asked for John's been. John actually retired from sports media, and most of you know this, and he started a new career, new chapter of his life. Spoke with him the other day. He's doing great. Family's settled in. He's getting, going through
new house.
It's new house, right on the water too. So he's doing great. He definitely misses y'all, and we'll definitely tell him, that y'all miss him and been thinking about him as well. But yeah. And before we do jump to the next one, we didn't put Kyle Trask on here for obvious reasons, but I think Kyle Trask definitely needs to have a good camp. But for me, I'm in the Clyde Christensen camp. Blaine Gabbert was brought back for a huge reason. That's because he's Brady's eyes and ears on the sideline. How many times have we seen Brady come off the sideline after a frustrating series and go sit next to Blaine, and Blaine shows him on the Surface Pro, this is this and that. So I think Trask definitely has to have a good camp with the opportunities he's going to get, but I don't think he's as much of as needs to have a good camp this year, more so than next year.
I agree completely. But if it's a year from now and we view Trask the same way that we do at the moment, then Kyle Trask will be on this list. I can tell you that. With Trask too, it's still just learning about what type of quarterback they're getting. And I think we learned that already from OTAs, just understanding, all right, he throws a better ball when he's thrown to the right side as opposed to the left. He can hit those timing routes and hit the outside more towards the right-hand side. But there's a long way to go and a lot more coaching up to do with Kyle Trask. And that's why he's not going to be on this list too. There's a couple guys that are going to take the next step, which might be a topic for tomorrow's conversation. But these are more guys that really need to play better, or else they might not be on the team this year. And as we stick with the offense, we'll move to the running back position. The next guy I have on the list is Keyshawn Vaughn, because Keyshawn Vaughn might have already seen his replacement with Rashad White getting drafted in the 3rd round by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm not like against Keyshawn Vaughn. I think he's okay in his role, but the Bucs never really had too much of a receiving running back until they got Giovanni Bernard, but Bernard got hurt last year. And you have Leonard Fournette, who's going to be your every down back. He's going to be there for all 3 downs if the Bucs want to go in that direction. Vaughn, they were hoping, could get into that situation, but he dropped a lot of balls in training camp, in the preseason, in games too. And then when he got in and he had his chance to be a starter, remember, Leonard Fournette did not play in the postseason game. So it was a lot of Keyshawn Vaughn, and Ronald Jones got hurt towards the end of the year too. So Vaughn had his moment.
Right.
And the signature play was the touchdown run against the Carolina Panthers. And that was awesome. That was sick. But you look at him outside of that, didn't really do too much. Now, he's a pretty solid pass blocker, and that's one way to get on the field. But with Rashad White right here, and you already know it's going to be Fournette, and you already know it's going to be Giovanni Bernard as the 3rd down back, I don't know necessarily if Keyshawn Vaughn's job is in jeopardy, but Rashad White is coming to be the starter eventually in 2 years from now. But this year, Rashad White could definitely win the 2nd running back role and take a lot of snaps and make a contribution to this team when Leonard Fournette is on the sideline. So this is a really, really crucial year for Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really liked him coming out. I thought, he played with Vanderbilt behind, the 128th ranked offensive line in the nation. You saw what he did to LSU the year they won the championship, was really good. His rookie year was, for a running back, he missed all of OTAs, all of training camp, all of rookie mini camp because it was COVID, so there was none. So it put him at a clear disadvantage.
Yeah.
Last year he got opportunities, didn't really he made the most of some of them, right? He finished the year with 5 plays of 10 or more, including that 55-yarder against Carolina. He still had, he didn't have as many fumble issues as the season went on. Last year, he definitely, put the ball on the ground more than once. But for me too, we got to see a little bit of his explosiveness, and PFF has him as 12 forced missed tackles and his elusiveness. So he's going to have to definitely have a big game. There's a big camp. There's no doubt about it to prevent falling to 4th on the depth chart. Do I think his roster spot's in jeopardy? Probably not. They didn't bring a running back in after rookie minicamp when they had Patrick Laird and Jordan Jason there. And right now they only have 5 on the roster, and Kenyon Barner is not really known for his running ability. He's more of a returner. So I don't think his job is necessarily in jeopardy this year, but he needs to show that he can be a competent member of that running back role and room and committee if they choose to go. So with Fournette wrapped up for 3 years, with now Rashad White wrapped up for 4 years. He's got 2 years left on his deal this year and next year. So it's going to be a big test for him to show that he can go out there and be that guy. He can go out there, and when his number is called, he's not going to average 3 yards a carry. He's going to get the more 4.5, 5, 6 yards per carry when it's his turn and really make some plays and make some electricity. Because if not, he's going to see the bench and they're going to see what the rookie can do.
It'll be difficult for Vaughn because that Fournette's going to be the guy for the next 3 years, and the contract that they gave him, they're not going to bench Fournette for Vaughn, even if it's, next season. And I have all the confidence in the world in Lenny, so I don't even want to speak that, into the air and the existence here. But for Vaughn too, there's a lot of running backs that find a niche on their team, or niche, however you want to call it. Like Darren Sproles. Everyone loves Darren Sproles. He was never going to be the number 1 running back on a team, but he did it as a punt returner. He did it as a third down back, being a very versatile player and a great receiver. I just don't see where Vaughn is going to necessarily get that on this team, because White's going to be there, and White has 4 years on his contract. And even if Giovanni Bernard, if this is his last year, and I know he's a veteran, then I just see White taking those third down roles. And I don't know where Vaughn...
That's if Fournette gets off the field. I mean...
Yeah, and that's the thing with Vaughn. He needs to prove, because he's not playing, again, because of the Fournette contract, Vaughn's not playing to earn like that multi-year deal with the Bucs. He's just, unfortunately, he's never going to get that because of the deal that they have with Fournette and because of drafting Rashad White. But he can, obviously, if he plays well, he could probably get a contract from another team. And we understand it's tough with running backs. It's really difficult. You're not going to get the type of pay that you want, but you still want to be an NFL player. So he's got to carve out that role somewhere, because at this point of his career, no team's going to sign him and be like, all right, you're our number 1 running back. It's just not the case. He hasn't earned it, or he hasn't really showed it, but that's what he needs to do for himself, let alone to help the Bucs, but for himself in the future. That's really going to be what he needs to do if he wants to get a second contract in this league. As we close things out with the offensive side of the ball, we're going to move to 2 offensive linemen right now. One is Fred Johnson, and the other is Aaron Stinnie, who is competing to be the starting left guard with Luke Gadecki, Nick Leverett, and Robert Hainsey. So, JC, I'll give this one to you. I guess we could start with Fred Johnson. He was one of your suggestions. You could take this in any direction that you want. You could talk about Stinnie as well, too.
Yeah, I'll go Stinnie first. And for Stinnie, I think, because I think you just brought it up with Keyshawn Vaughn, right? He's not playing to get a big deal somewhere else. And a rookie deal versus a veteran minimum deal are 2 different numbers, and teams usually like to go with a rookie deal, the guy that they fell in love with, that they drafted. So with Stinnie, he's got a big opportunity here. He needs to try to go win that job, at least, even if it's just for the first quarter of the season, first 6 games of the season, until Gadecki beats him out. Because if he doesn't, he's relegating himself to a career backup role. And when he's put good tape on as a starter, because he's a free agent again next year. So for him, if he doesn't have a good camp, if he gets beaten out immediately, and we know the coaching staff, I mean, Bowles said it last week, he's excited to see Gadecki out there. They want to see Gadecki win this. It's almost like Stinnie is given the first opportunity, but his back is up against the wall because they want to see someone beat him out. Not that they don't trust him. They drafted this guy early. They liked what they saw on tape. So Stinnie has to go out there, and he's just got to be a mauler. Now, the biggest thing that I think works in Stinnie's favor is what was said by Joe Gilbert, the offensive line coach. Communication is going to be key. Stinnie's best friends with Donovan Smith, and they are like this out at practice. They walk out at practice, they talk at practice, and I don't know their relationship off the field, but I'm sure it's pretty tight as well. So I think that gives them a leg up. But if he's going to set himself up for, if not another contract with the Bucs, because I think they're pretty good at depth right here, moving on next year with the drafting of Gadecki, and I don't know if Stinnie is going to be a priority for them to bring back, especially at the $1.5-2 million he might command. But for another team to say, all right, this guy put some good tape. He was a starting caliber guard in the Super Bowl. He filled in those other 3 games in the NFC Championship. He played well in 2021 in that season. Let's give him a shot to come and battle for our job. It needs to start in camp, and he needs to win that job out the get-go, even if he loses it in the season. That's what I think needs to happen for Stinnie, or he's going to put himself in a precarious situation going forward with his career.
Yeah, it's another situation where this player needs to have a good training camp, more for the betterment of himself than the actual Buccaneers. Because at the end of the day, whether it's Hainsey, Gadecki, Stinnie, Leverett, whoever wins that job is going to earn that job as the starting left guard. So I don't think the Bucs are going to be in a bad situation at all. But Stinnie, he's got a great thing going for him for the fact that he played in that Super Bowl run, and he showed that he could be a formidable starter and win a championship with this team, which is essentially, for the most part, the same type of roster that's in place and intact. So Stinnie, too, you obviously have to worry about that for his sake, not for the Bucs' sake. Like, the Bucs traded up only a couple picks, but nonetheless, they traded up to get Gadecki. So they really saw something in this guy that they really liked in the first place. But as you mentioned, 1-year contract. If he doesn't win this job, sure, maybe he could just stay and be a career backup. But everyone wants to, unless you're a fan of Blue Mountain State and you want to be the backup quarterback, which I made a reference to Blue Mountain State a couple years ago. And Mark Cook, RIP, and Scott had no idea what I was talking about. So I hope a couple people listening and watching to this know what I'm talking about with Blue Mountain State. But anyway, Aaron Stinnie, I don't think necessarily wants to be that guy that's sitting on the bench the whole time. So this is a big year for him to win a starting job and then earn a starting job, if it's not with the Bucs, with another place somewhere else. So again, more for him necessarily than for the Bucs. Now, Fred Johnson, interesting situation, because Wells has been the primary backup tackle over, the last couple of seasons. They had Joe Hagan there as well that could kind of transition from both, and they put him on the end too. We all know the big play. He didn't make the catch from the Super Bowl. A nice defensive play as well too. But Fred Johnson, this is more about making the team, and I want to see too, because if he makes the squad, I think, and we'll see what happens. Like, if he makes it and Wells doesn't, or the Bucs decide to keep both, I would think, and I understand when Wells played, it wasn't ideal and it wasn't, the greatest performance of all time. But also, when you bring in backup linemen for the most case, that's what made Stinnie so great, is because his transition there was seamless, where the rest of the league, that's not always the case. So I know Wells struggled a little bit in that game, especially against the Rams, but I still think overall the Bucs have solid depth when it comes to the offensive line. I'm not going to say great depth, but I like it. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, and with Fred Johnson too. I mean, this is another guy who, not only for the Bucs, because I think, Josh Wells, great player, 32 years old, stepped in last year, played on an injury, didn't really get the job done. I think if you look at Fred Johnson, he's on his last leg too. I mean, he could be out of the league if this doesn't work out. Undrafted guy, signed with Cincinnati. Cincinnati gave him an exclusive rights free agent tender. Then they went and got La'el Collins and made all these splashes on the offensive line, withdrew that tender, making him a free agent, waiving him. and no team claimed him. Now we know that this team was high on him, coming out of the draft. They didn't draft him, but they did like him as a prospect out of Florida, brought him in this season, but no team claimed him. He's on a veteran minimum deal for his time in the league. So like he's got this big opportunity ahead of him. Now he's proven he can play right tackle. I mean, last year he played 90 snaps for the Bengals. 53 of them were at right tackle. And he finished with a great run blocking game, 83.6 run blocking. He needs to work on his pass blocking, which is going to be huge. He let up 1 sack in those 90 snaps he played. But, he does offer a little bit of versatility. He's big guy, 6'7", 326, but he has played some at guard as well. He's going to have to show that he can handle both responsibilities on the right side and the left side, because it's two different things. And as we heard from Joe Gilbert again, getting that, playing on the right side and stepping back one way and your hands one way, to do the left side and using your hands another way, stepping back. It's not something everyone can learn. I mean, if it was that easy and if people were going to be that great at it, Tristan Wirfs was starting at right tackle, but Donovan Smith was out, not at OTAs, and you think, okay, maybe let's give him some reps at left tackle. But no, I'm not saying Tristan Wirfs couldn't do it. I'm just saying that, it's not the same. It's not as easy as just flipping a switch. And Fred Johnson really needs to show that he can handle those jobs if he's going to beat out Josh Wells. And I'm all for it, because Fred Johnson's only 24 years old. Josh Wells is 32 years old.
Yeah, that's a huge difference. We talked a lot about the Bucs wanting to get younger. Now, we mostly talked about it at different positions, but of course, if you can get a backup offensive lineman at that age and still mold them and help them develop into a better offensive lineman, yeah, I'm all for that. Why not take a shot with a player that's only 24 years old? And all right, JC, we've talked a lot about the offensive side of the ball.
How many defensive guys, though?
There's not too many defensive guys, but there are a couple of defensive guys that this season and then after the following season are going to be looking for some new deals, get a little extra cash. Now, if you have some cash in your pocket and you're not sure what to do with it, you need an advisor. The best place to go to is A Muni Financial.
At A Muni Financial, we help you live in the now.
Dude,
congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thank you.
And even though the now may feel very different, you still need to plan for the future.
How's retirement treating you?
Oh, just fantastic.
I know I say it all the time, but you really got to come up to Colorado.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
We can help you develop that plan to keep you on track, so you can still prepare for tomorrow, today. A Muni Financial. Plan ahead, stay ahead.
Dude, where do we need to go, JC?
We're going to Colorado, bruh.
We're going to Rado.
Rado.
Yeah, folks, if you're listening to this, A Muni Financial is the best. When it comes to managing your family's wealth, go to Muni Financial, because it's simply more than just allocating your assets. Pewter Report trusts Muni Financial with our investments and retirement funds, and you should trust them too. Scott has a lot of his investment and retirement and college funds for his children with Muni Financial. So make sure you call them at 1-800-868-6864. Talk to David or Mark. They're awesome people over there, because they'll tell you about all the different kinds of services that they have. There's legacy planning, brokerage and advisory services, retirement accounts, college savings, as I just mentioned, and a lot more. So once again, call 1-800-868-6864 and get started with the Muni Financial today. Shout out to Muni Financial. I can't wait for the Bucs to eventually play the Denver Broncos in Denver. It's got to be coming up within the next 3 or 4 seasons.
They played out here, I think, last time, right? Then they play here. So I think
Drew Lock beat the Bucs, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure someone in the chats will talk about it.
But the trip out there is going to be out there, or it could even be. I'm not sure. Do they play the AFC? No, they play the AFC West this year. I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's because they play the Chiefs. But before we get into the defensive side, guys, do us a huge favor. Make sure you're subscribing. If you're on Twitter or Facebook watching, pop over to YouTube, subscribe, like it. It helps our algorithm to get this show in front of more Bucs fans like yourself, more Pewter Report readers, listeners, viewers. And while you're at it too, while you're at pewterreport.com, make sure you sign up for the Pewter Pulse. Guys, I work there and I sign up for the Pewter Pulse. If every time we post an article, it goes right to your email and lets you know, hey, there's a new article out. You'll never miss anything that we post. And also while you're there, leave some comments, sign up for it and leave some comments on our stuff. Talk to us and, give us your example. Some of us will interact with you too in the comments too, if you have questions. So there's always a way to get a hold of us, whether that's at pewterreport.com in the comment section, whether that's shooting us DMs on Twitter. We're always open to answer your questions and talk, but hit those thumbs up button right now too.
Please do. Please do. And we appreciate everyone that comments in here, leaves responses and everything like that. We really appreciate all of you guys because we couldn't do this without the Pewter people. All right, JC. The next player we're about to talk about on the defensive side of the ball is definitely a high caliber player that brings up, I don't want to say controversy because he hasn't done anything bad or by anything of that nature, but he's a player that's polarizing, I think, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I want to preface it before I say his name. This is a player that is one of the better guys on this defense and is a leader of this defense. But because of that, we hold him to a little bit of a higher standard than some of the other guys we were talking about, like the wide receivers. This guy is going to make the team. All right. There's no question there. Yeah. But we're expecting more of him, especially when he has a contract coming up, not this season, but after the following season. And that is linebacker Devin White. Get Live 45. Get Live Stables. I love the rap song. I used it on one of the podcasts a while ago. But Devin White, he regressed a little bit from the Super Bowl winning season to this year. He struggled in the past with his pass coverage to the point that I believe it was Bruce Arians said that, he heard the media and everything like that. This year, too, I think he was even a little bit better in terms of stopping the pass, but it was the run game where I think he really struggled. And we saw that later in the season, too, especially in games when Lavonte David wasn't there to kind of clean up some of the messes going on. Like I remember that Jets game, the Jets ran the ball over and over and over against the Bucs and really didn't really have any issues moving until they decided to QB sneak it late in the game. But the Jets are still going to go and do Jets things. I think one of the things that really sticks out for me, too, when talking about Devin White is the sack numbers were down. And to me, that doesn't concern me, especially after we spoke to Larry Foote. And he was saying that, off-ball linebackers don't need to have 9 sacks, which is what he had a season ago when the Bucs won the Super Bowl. Probably would have got to double digits too, but he got COVID late in the year. This year, he only had 3.5 sacks. He played in all 17 games. And again, the sacks don't really concern me because they're going to ask him to do other things. And when he blitz, this year as much, he didn't get home. Like he would get stoned by the running back. So maybe they didn't send him as much. But had 128 tackles, no issues there too much. Only 8 tackles for loss, though. So we talk about that. He struggled in the run game. He wasn't making those splash plays, only 8 tackles for loss. And again, with the splash plays, no forced fumbles and no interceptions. So I want to see Devin White, the superstar Devin White. And let's not forget, he's still a good player. Like he made the Pro Bowl this year. I know a lot of that's like fan vote and things like that. Trevor Sikkema, alumni, Pewter Report, just had a story on Pro Football Focus that we wrote about too, what Trevor had to say about, he had 3 Bucs listed as the top 25 players under the age of 25. It was Tristan Wirfs and Devin White was on there as well, along with Antoine Winfield Jr. I believe it went Wirfs, Winfield Jr., and Devin White in that order. But Devin White, again, we hold him to a higher standard. We want him to be that star player. I don't think anyone could be Derek Brooks again, but we want him to be up there with the likes of Derek Brooks and, of course, Lavonte David, who should be a future Ring of Honor member. But Devin White, I think, is definitely a guy that needs to pick it up and turn it up a little bit this training camp.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it goes back to him relying on his speed. And you hit the nail on the head, too. Just quickly while you were talking, pulling up his PFF numbers, his pass coverage grade went up like 5-6 points, but his run defense grade went down almost 20 points. So, he didn't progress as much in the running game, or he regressed in the running game, actually. And for Devon White, he relies so much on his speed, right? He's a true sideline side linebacker, can chase guys down, is really always in a play. You always kind of see number 45 by a pile, whether he made the tackle or not. The problem I have with Devon White, and Trevor Sikkema, pointed out perfectly, is that he relies on his speed to make plays. And I asked Devon White in the exit interviews back, what do you need to work on? What do you need to get better at? And he pretty much said, I need to, be more accountable. I need to watch more film. I need to be able to, I play with all this aggressiveness, but I need to know when to play aggressive and when not. I mean, he took 3 guys last year on his own team, trying to be aggressive. So it's putting it all together for Devon White. And I'm really hoping that this is a year that he can move forward. Long Lost Glazer asked if he's at OTAs. He was not at OTAs yesterday. He could have showed up. I'm not sure when he plans on being there. It is voluntary, but I would like to see him there sooner rather than later, to be honest with you. He is one of the bigger leaders, one of the smarter guys on the team. It's just, when there's guys that like Grant Stewart, right, and KJ Britt, they don't have the level of speed and level of talent, but they make up for it with their smarts, and they're still able to make plays and put themselves in position to make plays because their read and react ability, their smarts ability, and they don't just rely on their traits. And Devon White can sometimes just rely on his traits more so than what he's seen on film, more so than what he's diagnosed. And I think that gets him into trouble. And that's what we want to see, is this perfect blend of both of them. And you're right, I'll never be Derek Brooks. I'll never be Levante David probably. But if he can get there, I still think he's got the opportunity to be a top 5 inside linebacker in this off-ball linebacker, inside, whatever you want to call, in this league. I think he's that talented. It's just melding the mental and the physical together.
He doesn't need to be them. He just needs to be his own Devon White. And there were the issues when he got into other players' ways, and it was just the aggressiveness. He just needs to find the right alley to bring that all together. So I don't want to sit here and just act like, there's all these bad things about Devon White. There are a couple of negatives, but at the end of the day, like, Devon White is a crucially important player to the Bucs defense. He's one of the best players they got. He's been a captain for multiple years, and he's still an extremely young player. I mean, we'll talk about Nacho brings like the energy and stuff like that, but it's Devon White as well that brings the swag, brings the bravado that this defense needs. And he's a very confident player. He believes in himself, but he believes in the players around him too. So, he's the guy. He's talked about it a lot as well too, where everyone talks about like, you would love to have Brady on the field with a minute left in the game because Brady's gonna go down the field and make the huge play. But Devon White's the guy that he said, no, I want the defense on the field. I want the defense being the ones to get to the quarterback, to close it out, to stop it. We saw that it wasn't necessarily closing it out because it was already a blowout, but in the Super Bowl. Shout out to Devon White because he won me a bunch of money in the Super Bowl, because you do the Super Bowl boxes. The Bucs won the game 31-9. So I had Bucs 1, Chiefs 9. That was the end of the third quarter. No one scored in that fourth quarter because Devon White got the interception late in the game. So I won the third quarter and the fourth quarter after Devon White made the interception, threw his helmet. So shout out to Devon White for that. And again, that's what we want to see this year. We want to see the splash plays. We want to see more forced fumbles, more interceptions. We'll see what happens with the sacks. And that's a big difference too. Again, because he's going to have Larry Foote as the inside linebackers coach and the co-defensive coordinator, where last year he had Mike Caldwell, who went to Jacksonville to be the defensive coordinator. So I think having Larry Foote, a man that doesn't sugarcoat anything, he just gets straight to the point. I think that's going to be a huge help for Devon White this year. I'm very excited for Devon White because I'm optimistic that he's going to have a bounce back year and take it to another level. He was already a Pro Bowl player, but we'll see what else he can do from there.
Yeah, perhaps. I totally agree with everything. I think, you look at what he did in 2020, had a down year in 2020, but Levante had a down year a bit too in 2021, talked about that tackles for losses. I'm thinking that this year is going to be a bounce back. He talked about wanting to do it. You talk the talk, walk the walk, get your butt in camp, and let's see you do it. But perhaps someone even more polarizing on this team on defense than Devon White in his play is Sean Murphy-Bunting. I mean, this is a guy who last year, his campaign all offseason was all-pro, all-pro, Pro Bowl, all-pro. And we heard Kevin Ross.
A lot of Kevins and Devins on this show today.
Kevin Ross, the cornerbacks coach, say pretty much, that's the mentality we want to instill in these guys. And it didn't work out. The first game, he was getting picked on all by Dak Prescott before he dislocated his elbow. Then missed, I think, 9 or 10 games, and just struggled. And he's struggled with consistency ever since stepping into one of those starting jobs. He was playing over Jamel Dean on the outside in 2020 sometimes. Now playing more in the slot with Dean taking that jump if he can stay healthy. It's really going to be a put up or shut up year for him, because they brought someone in, they didn't bring in a typical slot guy to, replace him, but they brought in, obviously drafted the versatile Zion Malcolm, who can play inside and outside. But Logan Ryan is coming at your neck for snaps in the nickel. I mean, he's been one of the better nickel cornerbacks going back to his time with the Patriots too. So versatile guy. And if Sean Murphy-Bunting can't put it all together and take that next step and stay healthy and put it on the field, I mean, he's not getting cut, guys. He's not getting cut, even though Delaney balled out. He's not getting cut, but he needs to prove that, hey, he's worth the contract, or else they could potentially move on from him this year. And I think that's a big likely scenario if he doesn't do it.
Yeah, I would put SMB a little bit into the category that we talked about earlier with Scotty Miller, where I think the injury played a lot more into a down year than I would say most other players. But yeah, there's no question when he was healthy too, he got beat in the slot, and he doesn't have the security this year of, all right, well, if SMB is not going to play there, who else is? As you just said, Logan Ryan being there now, right. That's going to be over his shoulder the whole time. All right. He needs to step it up, because if he doesn't, Logan Ryan's going to be right there. I mean, SMB did not have an interception last year. He had the great run in the postseason when he had an interception in every game up until the Super Bowl itself too. And as awesome as that was, that'll always go down in Bucs history. And whether you like it or not, the NFL, and as in most places, is what have you done for me lately in sports? All sports is what have you done for me lately? And SMB, again, because he got hurt. I mean, you couldn't start the season any worse than getting injured like that early into the first game of the season. Seriously. Literally the first game of the whole year, like Thursday Night Football, before anyone else even played. So I'm certainly worried for him in terms of, I think Logan Ryan's going to win that job, but I'll cut him a little bit of slack early in training camp because he had all the injury issues that went on. But he's been here at OTAs. We'll see how he responds in these next couple of weeks. Now, JC, there was one other player that you had on this list, and he's the last player we'll talk about and then finish up this podcast. I don't necessarily agree with it, but we can agree to disagree. You want to talk about the last guy you have on this list?
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what you guys think in the comments too. But the last guy I have on this list is Logan Hall. I think he needs to have a really big camp, and it's, the Bucs aren't on a team here where they can afford to just let him develop throughout the season, right? You're in Tom Brady's last season. You need to have considerable, reliable playmakers at every level. If not playmakers, just competent players. If this was a team like Jacksonville or 2019 or whatever, where Jameis was the quarterback, then yeah, sure, you let him make his bumps and bruises and mistakes. So for me, I think Logan Hall really has to have a good camp, a good OTAs, good camp, show that he's got understanding of the playbook, shows that he can not only just work against the veteran talent, the strong veteran talent that they have, and also just continue to show improvement and that he can handle that role. If for whatever reason by mid-training camp, closer towards the end of the training camp, 2/3, 3/4 the way through, he hasn't making that step or proved to the coaches that he can be the guy for a full 17-game season, I think that that's when they pick up the phone. And if Sue's still available, I guess, there was rumors that he was receiving interest from the Bengals and Raiders. If Sue's still available, or Sheldon Richardson or Akeem Hicks or one of these veterans, you call them up and say, hey, we need insurance policy here. And that would relegate Logan Hall more into a rotational role for his rookie year, more so than saying, hey, we want you to be the guy. Now, I think the Bucs have and the coaching staff have every intention. Sorry. That last comment just had me laughing. I think they've got every intention of him wanting to be the guy and take over that 3-tech position and not have to rely on get younger, get faster, exactly like they said. But if you can't rely on him, if you don't know if he's a question mark heading into the season, and you can add a more known commodity, a positive thing that you know what you're getting, and use him as a rotational role as rookie season, I think that's the play. So, I mean, he needs to have a good camp. And I'd put JTS in that slightly as well, too. There's still a bevy of veteran pass rushers. You've highlighted them before. I've highlighted some of them as well. If these two guys, these young guys, struggle a little bit in camp, and the Bucs in an all-in and Brady's last season decide, hey, we at least need some insurance here. If they falter starting, I think they both need real big camps.
I just think Hall is in the situation that pretty much almost every rookie is in, where they're still trying to figure out the NFL, how to play in this league. So there's going to be the rookie mistakes. Now, he's in a different situation where he's coming in and is expected to produce on a winning team right away. As you mentioned, the teams that are at the top of the draft, they just want a talented player. Now, because he's a rookie, again, like I don't see the difference between, okay, I see a little bit of the difference, but okay, we want Logan Hall to play well versus Rashad White can kind of learn a little bit more and then get his opportunities. Hall is already going to be in that rotational role, and we'll see if the Bucs bring in another veteran defensive tackle. But even if they don't, I think the Bucs can get away. We saw it 2 years ago when Vita Vea got hurt and Ndamukong Suh took up a lot of the slack. I understand Suh's not here, but this is the reversal of it where no Suh, but you're going to get Vita Vea, I think, picking it up even more, taking more of a leadership role, as we heard him discuss yesterday when we were at OTAs. But I think the Bucs can get away with, if they're not fully confident in Logan Hall yet, and I think it's going to be a learning process. Like, I don't expect Hall to be coming out of the gates exciting everyone. I think gradually, as it goes from July to early August to middle of August to late August, you're going to see that progression. But I think especially early on too, and I understand the Bucs schedule is quite difficult this year, especially in the first 4. But Tampa Bay can get away with relying on Will Golston to play a couple extra snaps than maybe they normally would, or Nacho getting in there, or putting Will Golston in more pass rushing situations. I mean, that's what they said in the first place, why they wanted Logan Hall, is because he got that quick first step as a pass rusher. So if he begins his time with the Bucs and he's just going in on third downs, I don't necessarily think that's going to be the worst thing. But I understand the point that you're making of he's going to contribute right away, so they need him to be up to speed.
For me, it's just that left side of the line, right? I mean, you look at the left side of the defensive line, and you've got Logan Hall and you got Joe Tryon, both of those guys. I mean, that could be, and you face some pretty good. I mean, depending on Kamara's situation, you're facing Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Johnson, AJ Dillon, and then you're facing Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Ronald Jones the first 4 games. Not that I just threw Ronald Jones. There's a joke. But I mean, so it's you're going to be tested by some of these running backs right out the gate. So, it's a lot of youth right there, and you are in a win now season. So I just think they both need to have really strong camps to show that that they are at the level where they need to be, or it might coerce the Bucs to say, hey, we need to look at somebody else and bring someone else in here, because Cam Gill doesn't move the needle for me. And Anthony Nelson, you had one great season. I really like Nelly as a person, as a player, but consistency's there. And if he's the guy that has to go in, if JTS struggles, or you're relying on Nacho to be that starter, I'm a little worried. So I think both of these guys need to have great camps to convince the Bucs not to go out and sign veterans, to at least, if not compete with them, at least be insurance policies for them and eat into some of their snaps.
Sure. I just see it as it's not going to be an issue if it's only for a couple of games and then finally they think it's enough to let Logan Hall go and be the guy. If it's for a full season, then you might run into some issues, but that's why you have those insurance policies. And I'm sure by the time training camp gets here, we're going to hear of another defensive tackle that'll at least be in the rotation to compete, might not necessarily go and make the team, but at least another guy that's going to be in there to push everyone else there. And as we make a push towards 9,000 subscribers and hopefully get to 10K right around when training camp gets here, just want to remind everyone again to please go and hit the like button on these videos, on some of the other videos we have of hearing from various coaches and players. It helps with our algorithm. It gets all of the Pewter Report people knowing about when our podcasts and videos are coming up. So make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe, hit that button as well too. And make sure you go to pewterreport.com. We got a lot of great content out right now. A couple things from Todd Bowles, Cam Brate as well too. We'll have some more content up tonight.
Sign up for the Pulse too.
Yeah, sign up for the Pewter Pulse. And again, we will be back tomorrow for Thursday's episode. So for JC Allen, I'm Matt Matera saying thank you everyone for watching. We'll catch you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another episode of the Pewter Report podcast. Catch you later. Peace out. See ya. Good night. Bye-bye. Adios. Later. Out.